1, Beck.
Welcome to the Glenn Beck program. Tonight, I know he doesn't need it, but I'm going to give President Obama the same advice that George Bush should have taken, but didn't. I'll explain. Also, Washington, D.C. may get the right to vote in the House of Representatives. That's fantastic. Taxation without representation is wrong, but there's a catch here. It really doesn't sync with the Constitution. Put that through the shredder once again today. And only in California, they may be taxing pot to solve a budget crisis. Is everybody in this country high, or is it just me? If you believe this country is great, but the donkeys and the elephants are just shredding the frickin' Constitution, it is time for you to take a stand. Come, follow me. Welcome to Jamaica, where everybody is happy. Poor, but happy. Hello, America. How are you? Before I get to the hot list, I just want to show you this great. Somebody sent this in. I think this is fantastic. Can we get a shot of this? This is going to be the new motto here on this program. We will fulfill all that our leader desires. Yes. Oh, and we will. All right, so here's the hot list because the leader requires it. This is the hot list, the stories the media is covering today. Stocks ended a day down after the late afternoon rally. The Dow dropped 80 points. I thought this was fixed. The feds arrested more than 750 people across the country as part of a huge operation taking on a violent drug cartel. And Vice President Biden asked an aide to tell him the website's number. I think this happened to John McCain, but the press was reporting how out of touch John McCain was, but we'll just leave it at that. Tonight, I'm going to give President Obama the same advice I would have wished George Bush would have taken, and that is, well, it's this. He can say goodbye to those great approval ratings, just like George Bush did, if he doesn't follow the one thing. America needs politicians to say what they mean and mean what they say. Did anybody watch the speech last night and just have blood just shooting right out of your eyes? There were at least 3 times, and I counted a lot more, but 3, when Obama said one thing, but he and his progressive buddies are doing something entirely different. Let's start here. Here's what he said.
Everyone in this chamber, Democrats and Republicans, will have to sacrifice some worthy priorities for which there are no dollars. And that includes me.
That's fantastic. I'm like Nancy Pelosi. Yes, yes, yes. She was great, wasn't she? Sit down, Nancy. So anyway, if he wants to cut back, I am all for it. We're cutting back at my house. Are you doing it at your house? What do you think about the House and the White House? Count me in. But in the same speech, he then proposed additional spending. Get this one. It was like it was Jesus. And I'm going to cure cancer in our lifetime. Then national health care reform. Then overhauling Social Security. Then tax-free universal savings accounts for everybody. I think, maybe I'm wrong, I think I also heard him mention college for everybody. Really? Now, of course, he was a little vague on exactly how much, he's going to put into all of these proposals, but the estimates run well into the trillions of dollars. Next, the president's populist rant against those evil, greedy CEOs.
This time, CEOs won't be able to use taxpayer money to pad their paychecks or buy fancy drapes or disappear on a private jet. Those days are over.
Okay, those days are over. Nancy was about to stand up. Yeah! No, I won't do it again. Anyway, are they really over for the CEOs? If they are, great. If they're really over for the politicians as well. Senator Dianne Feinstein flies cross-country on her husband's private Gulfstream. $80,000 each way. Of course, she only pays $900 to her husband. Because that's what it costs to fly on a big airplane like that. Even Obama is flying better than first class now, and this is thanks not to him, but to George W. Bush. He's getting a fleet of 24 new helicopters at a total taxpayer cost of $11.2 billion. Does the president have enough planes? Can we get you a soda with that, Mr. President? This is nothing short than crazy. But Obama isn't done yet. Ask yourself what's wrong with this next sentence.
I'm proud that we passed a recovery plan free of earmarks.
I'm sorry. Didn't know you were coming back to me so soon. Wow. Wow. Maybe he's using a foreign language dictionary there to define the word earmarks, because I think that's the only way you could possibly think that statement was true. The spending bill, clean of earmarks, has $2 billion for batteries in it, $800 million for carbon capture projects, and more than $3 million for new uniforms at the Transportation Security Administration. You know, the airport cops, because they think that'll make them look more official. It's the uniform that's making me not listen to them. Obama is playing word games, just like, does anybody remember this clip?
It depends upon what the meaning of the word is. Yes.
It depends on what the meaning of earmarks is. Look, America, say what you mean and mean what you say. An earmark, if it smells like an earmark, it looks like an earmark, it's an earmark. It's kind of like sex. Sex and earmarks. I think we all kind of know what they are. We don't really need to define them. These people are shameless. While you are making difficult choices, it's like they're at a party. I swear to you, this is how I saw them in last night. This is how I thought they should all be dressed. Go ahead, put it up. There it is. Little party hats. The woman in the party hat just announced this year's spending bill, and there are $3.8 billion going to special projects. You could define that as pork, not an earmark. You know, whatever your definition of is, there were $200,000 in this for tattoo removal. That's a big tattoo, I'm thinking. On yesterday's program, I told you that we have a real shortage in this country, and it ain't dollars. It is values and principles, like honesty and integrity. Before there's no more trust left in this bank, we've got to have somebody actually stand up and say what they mean and mean what they say. Not a bunch of words that they pulled out of your head in a focus groups. You know, last night, I think you saw what I meant by that. And in the end, America, this is the real sad truth. In the end, if this country spirals out of control, it's not their fault. It's our fault. This is our country. They work for us, and including me. It's my fault as well. You know, one thing we need to learn is the difference between hearing a speech and actually listening. In Washington is Steve Moore. He's from the Wall Street Journal. He's a senior economics writer and author of The End of Prosperity. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Glenn. By the way, can I add one more fib to your list there?
Yeah.
You know, Barack Obama said last night, remember, to great applause, he was going to cut the budget deficit in half by 2013. Remember he said that? Here's the catch. The Congressional Budget Office says that if Barack Obama did nothing, if they didn't pass any legislation, none of this stuff, the federal budget deficit would go down by 70% by 2013. So he's actually making it worse, not better.
Wait. How is that? Is that because we're going to grow our way out of this?
Well, they assume that the point is that what Barack Obama has done, and this is very tricky, he took a $1 trillion budget deficit that he inherited from George Bush. He added another $1 trillion with the stimulus plan and these other bailout plans. So now we got a $2 trillion budget deficit. So if he cuts it to $1 trillion by 2013, he's cut it in half, right?
This is not going to stand. You know what, Stephen, what makes me so angry is nobody would go, no parent would go to their kids and say, hey, can I borrow some money from you? No parent would do that. But no parent definitely would ever steal the money from their children. Or can you imagine the parent who is like, you know what, I want this big TV, or I want this new car, or I want a bigger house, so just put a tax lien on my kid's salary when they're 25 and they're growing up and they get their first paycheck. Nobody would ever do that. And that's what we're doing.
Well, that's right. And when I was listening to the speech last night, you know, I'm a money guy, Glenn, so I'm sitting there kind of calculating with each sentence that goes by how much all of these giveaways are actually going to cost, because they sound wonderful. You know, free college tuition, free health care for everybody, free free child care. If you can't pay your rent and you can't pay your mortgage, the government will do it for you. It all sounds wonderful, but when you add all of these things up, you know, you're talking about, I calculated about $500 billion more spending on top of all the stimulus spending and the bailouts we've already done.
Give me the, bring up the full screen here. You did something on the budgets of the subcommittee.
This is
budget.
amazing.
Give them to me here.
Yep.
This is...
Well, this is amazing stuff, isn't it? Here's what's going on. You know, in the private sector, if you double bill somebody, you go to jail. And this is what the federal government is doing in these agencies. Basically, they've got all this extra money from the stimulus plan. What happened just a couple of hours ago on the House floor, Glenn, is they passed something called the omnibus spending bill, which gives all these agencies an extra 8% raise. So now we've got these federal agencies, many of them, as you can see on your screen, they're going to get 50, 60, 80%. The Department of Energy gets, I believe it's 150% increase in their budget. Here's a time, Glenn, when all Americans are pulling in their belt and sucking in their stomach, and government is expanding like crazy.
Real quick, I just want to ask you this. Would you check into this and let me know, Stephen? He said last night, which is something that I screamed at George W. Bush about, put the war on the budget. Let us see what the war is costing us and put it in the real budget. Well, I cheered last night when he said that.
Yeah,
but how much
that
do you
was
want
one
to
of
make
the few things he said last night I agreed with.
But how much do you want to make a bet? He will not put it on the books. He will not put it on the books. He'll show it to us.
We will see tomorrow. We will see tomorrow, Glenn, because the president's budget comes out tomorrow. I will report to you whether that money's in there.
You let me know. Thank you very much.
It was the only sentence of this whole speech that I agreed with.
No, you know
let's
what?
have honest accounting.
Look,
let's have honest accounting.
I agreed with that we're going to make it through it, but not in the way he was talking, because he's not telling... Look, nobody's telling you the truth. That's why I have this next guest here. I've been looking for people who are honest, who have integrity, who are going to say the hard things. You may not want to hear it, but you know what? Sometimes you got to go to the doctor and they got to tell you got cancer. Now, if you don't want to hear that information, that's fine. But you're going to only get sicker, and then you're going to die. If you listen to the doctor, there's a chance that you'll survive. There's a better than just a chance we'll survive. We always fight our way through it. We're Americans, but we've got to listen to what the prognosis is here. Walter Zimmerman, he is the vice president of United ICAP. It's financial data and analysis company. You are just a company that just takes data points, right? You just look at all of the different things that are out there, and you just have the picture based on data points.
Yeah, our responsibility is to give the correct advice, to tell it like it is, to diagnose the problem, and give our clients strategic trading, hedging.
Okay. All right. And you've been saying for 3 years that we are headed for real trouble. You believe that we're not only headed for a depression. Do you believe that we're at the doorstep, or just walking through the...
I think we're entering into it right now. And the key is the combination of a collapsing equity market, a collapsing real estate market, and a collapsing commodity market. It's extremely rare that those three trends occurred together, and the last time they did was the Great Depression.
Okay. Look, I don't want to be a guy who's, you know, all gloom and doom and no hope, because there is hope if we experience the pain. But everybody is telling us there's two things. Could you explain this to me? I don't understand this. Last night, Barack Obama said, our greatest, the lifeblood of our economy. Do you remember that? Did you hear this? A lifeblood of our economy is credit. And we've got to get the credit market open. And I thought to myself, and I'm not an economist, I don't do what you do, so explain, tell me where I'm wrong. I thought of my house, and if my house, the lifeblood of my house was credit, we'd be doomed. The lifeblood of my house is production, that I'm making something and bringing new money in.
Yes. Now, the thing here is, the reason we got into this mess in the first place is because the whole economy was built on credit. Credit is debt. And that easy money pushed prices, especially real estate prices, to unsustainable levels. And when the house of cards started to unravel, then suddenly people are asking, well, where did all the money go? Everybody seemed to be so wealthy before. Where did it all go? It was never money in the first place. It was credit. And now it's debt that's being called in. And now people need to raise cash to pay down debt.
So here's the problem, Walt, that I don't think people understand yet, that, and correct, please tell me I'm wrong, that what we had going was bogus.
Absolutely.
It was all
absolutely
paper. It was all,
absolutely.
there wasn't anything real. So when anybody says, oh, we're going to come back, we just have to get it started again, we got to get people spending again because you'll bring it back, it's not going back there.
No, and it's not going to happen. It's like somebody wakes up with a hangover and you try and give him vodka to cure his hangover. It's not going to work.
Right.
A credit bubble has just collapsed. Markets need to return to cash. Consumers need to raise their cash levels, and prices need to get cheap enough so that people feel compelled to buy, which means the only way out of this is deflation. You have to go through the pain of deflation in order for the economic cycle to bring back a recovery.
How irresponsible are two things here. First of all, anybody who's telling you, go out and buy right now, go out and spend, you got to take this money and spend. Irresponsible.
Absolutely irresponsible. It's the worst possible advice for the individual consumer right now.
Might be good for everyone, but you can't.
It might be great for the economy and for certain businesses, but it would be irresponsible for a consumer trying to raise cash, pay down debt, to go out and spend. They're just not going to do it. Because number two, they also see that prices are going down. The longer they wait, the cheaper things get.
Okay, so real quick, because I'm way past time here. Obama just announced a $634 billion reserve fund to partially pay for the vast expansion of the U.S. healthcare system. He is going to pay for that by trimming tax breaks for the wealthy, tightening payments to insurers, hospitals, and physicians. How irresponsible is it to now have a new program for $634 billion on a down payment on the expansion of healthcare?
Well, you know, I think part of what's going on here is to try and keep people employed, because if there's a new round of layoffs, then deflation is going to take control, and then we're in real deep trouble. Because if people don't have jobs, then they will definitely not spend.
I'd love to have you back. Would you think that Rupert Murdoch was overstating it when he issued a memo here at Fox yesterday, and in it he said, this is a point in history where nations will be redefined.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's pretty frightening.
Economic systems will be redefined by this. This is a once-in-a-generation event, and to be honest, the forces at work are much more serious and severe and deeply rooted than what this country faced during the Great Depression.
When do we hit bottom?
We're thinking around 2012 things will start to...
What does unemployment look like in 2012?
Well, a lot higher than it is now, and actually we think...
Give me a ballpark.
15% higher. Some argue that it's already there, that there's a lot of people who just gave up looking for jobs. 15, 20%.
20%. Okay. Thank you. We'll talk
you.
again. You bet. Now, California. California, you keep thinking. I know, you're a thinker. They've got an awesome plan to fix the economy. They're going to smoke pot. Yeah. I'm stoked about California's plan for America. Right on. Next.
Glenn Beck is brought to you by the UPS Store, mailbox services, and a whole lot more.
Gone down the tubes.
I am 100% upset.
We don't own America anymore. I'm checking out.
Well, you're not alone, and I'm going to prove it.
Glenn Beck. Give him 2 weeks, and he'll give you reason to believe in America again.
Marijuana brownies, anyone? This is the worst. The people in our green room, I'm happy to say it's clear they've never been high. I want to ask you what's wrong with this picture. Chicago is trying to fix $50 million their budget gap by taxing car rentals in suburban areas. And now California is talking about legalizing marijuana and taxing marijuana to solve their budget problems. Rob Campia is the executive director for the Marijuana Policy Project. How you doing, Rob?
Doing well.
All right. You smoke marijuana? You have any of those marijuana?
Occasionally.
Occasionally? It's against the law, you know.
Yeah, so speeding, and a lot of people do that also.
Wow. Okay. You used to work for Normal, did you not?
Yes.
Yes.
14 years ago.
14 years ago? And is it true that you quit working with Normal because they were stoned all the time and that's all they really wanted to do is get high? They weren't serious about changing the laws?
No, everyone there is very serious about changing the laws.
Really? Okay.
The reason that I left and started up the Marijuana Policy Project is because I wanted to focus almost exclusively on lobbying and ballot initiatives.
Okay. So tell me, because look, I'm a libertarian. You want to legalize marijuana, you want to legalize drugs, that's fine. We have to have a different conversation in America, and that conversation is, hey, America, you know, forget about the whole health care thing, because if somebody's doing heroin, somebody's doing pot, and, I mean, pot just rips your lungs up. If you want to do pot, that's great, but I ain't giving you any health care. And that's good. I'd rather do that. You be as high as you want. I ain't giving anybody health care. Can we have that discussion, Rob?
Well, we can, but marijuana, first of all, doesn't rip up your lungs. It doesn't cause lung cancer or emphysema. So I think that's an old wives' tale.
How about heart attacks? Because, I mean, cookies, I've got cookies.
There's no scientific evidence that associates marijuana use with an increased likelihood of death.
Okay, Rob, yes, but, I mean, look, I'm just going to be straight with you, American. This is not something I'm proud of, but I did inhale. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I did everything you could possibly do, and it wasn't really, I mean, there's like actually, there's two brain cells up in my head. One's just going, breathe, dummy, and the other one's just like scattering around trying to figure everything out. You can't tell me that marijuana is good for your health.
Well, I mean, it is good for some people's health. I mean, you know probably full well that marijuana is used for cancer chemotherapy treatments, AIDS
If you got
syndrome,
cancer, I'm going to give you
MS.
marijuana. That's okay. You got cancer, I'm going to give you marijuana. Look, here's the thing. You want to legalize drugs, legalize drugs. But now what we're talking about is legalizing pot so we can make money. The reason why I'm bringing this story to you tonight, America, is because this is how it's all going to happen. Quick, panic, we're out of money. Let's sell pot. So why don't we have a real conversation here instead of one about an emergency spending problem?
I think we should. I mean, taxing marijuana is only one good reason why marijuana prohibition should be brought to an end. There's a few other good reasons. One is the prohibition of marijuana over the last 71 years has not actually prevented people, including you, from using marijuana. So if we know that this government program called Prohibition doesn't work, maybe after 71 years it's time for a new approach. I'll give you one other good reason to end Prohibition, and that is currently the police are spending an enormous amount of time on marijuana arrests, 872,000 arrests a year. That's not good for public safety. It'd be better nationwide.
Have you ever been to New York, Rob? You've been to New York?
Sure, all the time.
Yeah. I am not kidding you. I have walked down the streets and there's somebody like smoking pot next to a cop. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, there are more than 40,000 marijuana arrests in New York every year, so I don't want the viewers to think that marijuana is essentially legal in New York, because that's certainly not the case.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that it's legal in New York. I'm sure that there are arrests, you know, if you got a big... No, seriously, if you've got like a big bag of it or something, but you're telling me you've never... Well, you're not a good... Of course, you've seen people smoking on the street. I've seen them smoking on the streets. It's not like it's tying up a lot of police time. Police are like, he's smoking a joint. Let's move on with our life.
All I can tell you is what the FBI says, which is 872,000 marijuana arrests last year, and about 750,000 of those arrests were for simple possession, personal possession. It's an enormous wear and tear on our criminal justice system, and I think that anyone who cares about public safety would rather have the police freed up to deal with and prevent crimes like assault, theft, rape, murder, etc. I mean, that's a no-brainer. And right now, the police aren't able to deal with all the crimes that are happening across the country. So why not take them off this marijuana nonsense?
Look, Rob, here's the thing. I have no problem, as a libertarian, I have no problem talking to you about these kinds of things. I think marijuana is bad for you. I know. I did it. Stupid to do. However, we'll have that conversation, not the conversation that California is currently having, which is, oh my gosh, we've got to raise some money. Why don't we tax pot over here? Because California, the largest cash crop in California is
marijuana.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
And, you know, you bring up a good point there, which is that, you know, with alcohol, which isn't great for you, being taxed and regulated, tobacco obviously kills, that's taxed and regulated. Most products in our society are taxed and regulated. If someone actually believes that marijuana is really bad for you, then why would you want that product not regulated? I mean, it seems like that's exactly the kind of thing that should be regulated, right?
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. If you're ready for more blood to shoot out of your eyes, or, you know, you might want to stop and get an extra pint, the House has made it now illegal to keep a chimpanzee as a pet. But not for even the most cynical person will not guess the reason why they did this yesterday. And one city's plan to pay off people's credit card bills with your tax dollars. Next. So I get to my office earlier today, and I see that the House has now passed a H.R. 80. It is it's the Monkey Act, where you know the lady who had that chimpanzee and it attacked her friend and it ripped her face off. Well, apparently the House took this on and they banned chimps as pets. Can't have a chimp as a pet. Okay, why do you suppose they would do that? Be cynical. I mean, first idea is, well, they want to protect people. Yeah, right. That's what they were doing. Be a little cynical. All right, you'd think, well, maybe what they wanted to do is they just, you know, this was in the news and they wanted to be seen as doing something important, right? No, you're not cynical enough. Here's why they did it. H.R. 80 is called the Humane Primate Safety Act. This one was a gift to the Humane Society to protect chimps from cruel and unusual punishment like being kept in a cage. This wasn't to protect you, man. This is for the monkey people. I'm just saying. What was that vote like? You know, is that along party lines? I'd like to know. Is there a pro-chimp lobby? The answer is yes in today's world. Crazy. Here's your headlines now from Fox Central with Patty Allen Brown.
Well, meanwhile, the chimp in this story, by the way, used to sleep in a bed with his owner. You know, and if anyone suffered cruel and unusual punishment, it would be the victim. But
that was just unkind. Okay, go ahead.
In the news right now, breaking news tonight we have on a massive international crackdown on Mexican drug cartels. Today, the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the Justice Department announced that more than 750 suspects have been arrested. It's part of a joint 2-year-long operation by the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. One of the biggest drug trafficking cartels in Mexico was targeted, the Sinaloa cartel. Attorney General Eric Holder vowed earlier the operation is far from over.
I stand before you today to say that we are ready and willing to continue the fight with our Mexican counterparts against these violent enterprises.
CIA Director Leon Panetta says his agency has just begun preparing daily economic intelligence briefings for President Barack Obama. Panetta says the CIA is closely monitoring the potential impact of the global economic crisis on our national security. And investigators in Amsterdam have found the flight data recorders that were inside the Turkish Airlines jet that crashed in the Netherlands this morning while trying to land. They're being sent to Paris for analysis. 9 people were killed, 50 injured, but miraculously 125 people survived. And those are your headlines. I'm Patty Ann Brown. Glenn Beck returns in a moment, but first, Brett Baer has a preview of what's on Special Report tonight. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Patty Ann. Coming up, the House passes a huge new spending bill. We'll have an update on the card check legislation. Where does the union vote bill stand? Chalk one up for the 10 Commandments, we'll explain. And Britt Hume on the president's tax philosophy. Join me at the top of the hour, 6 Eastern, for Special Report. Now back to Glenn Beck.
All right. I've been telling you about the escalating violence along the U.S.-Mexico border. Now the governor of Texas, Rick Perry, is calling on Washington for help. Fox's Chris Gutierrez is live now from El Paso, Texas, with the latest. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Glenn. You know, it's a serious situation out here. Just take a look at this bulletproof glass that some of our border agents actually hide behind to shield themselves from incoming gunfire. I mean, this is riddled with bullet holes. These bullets came over from Juarez, where Within the last 4 days in Juarez alone, the police chief has quit, the mayor moved his family north into the United States in El Paso, and a convoy carrying the governor came under heavy attack, and one of his bodyguards was killed. 2 others were injured. Texas Governor Rick Perry calls this a dire situation, and Glenn, it's one he's keeping a close eye on.
All right, we'll talk again. I want to go to Arizona now for an exclusive look at the Border Patrol's new system for tracking down illegal aliens. We don't need more systems. We just need to stop it. Just need to send the guys out, pick them up. Fox's Adam Housley is here, live from now Tucson. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Glenn. We also have some breaking news for you coming in about that big drug bust in the Sinaloa cartel. I just got off the phone with the Mexican government, the president's office, and they're telling me that the brother of the head of the cartel, Rafael Caro Quintero, is being extradited to the United States for prosecution. That is a huge development in this story because President Fox did not do that. President Calderon has been doing that. He's been giving some of these drug suspects to the United States, and of course they don't want to come here because they live like kings in Mexico. Again, the brother of the head of the Sinaloa cartel is coming to the United States for prosecution. Now, back to the story you're talking about, the MSS, the mobile surveillance system. It's extremely important here. $500,000 per unit. They can put it up on a mountaintop anywhere in this area, and for 10 miles they can scan the horizon down to the point to see what someone might be carrying with them, which is extremely important for safety of our border agents as they're out there trying to round up some of these people coming across. Take a listen to what one had to say.
We know how many are in the group, if they're carrying marijuana backpacks, if they're carrying just regular backpacks, if they're carrying any long arms or any type of weapons. We have that information that we give right to the agents.
Glenn, because of that and because of the men on the border here, men and women down here doing good work, the numbers are dropping significantly in Tucson, but as you mentioned, there's still a ways to go as this violence from Mexico spills over. Glenn?
Thanks very much. Now, it was a close call, but still now back into Texas. The city of Houston almost voted on a plan today to take money out of the pockets of hardworking residents who pay their bills on time to pay down the credit cards of those people who don't pay their bills on time. Pam Holm is a Houston City Councilwoman who voted against, thank God there's somebody sane, she voted against this plan today if it didn't die. Well, welcome, Pam. How are you?
I'm great, Glenn. Thank you so much for letting me be here with you today.
Please explain how this insanity was going to work.
Thank you so much, because what could have happened in Houston could happen anywhere in the city, in the country. For a moment in time, Houstonians believe that because of an item placed on the agenda that had no committee process, had no discussion, that surprised each and every one of our council members, because of this item was placed on the agenda that basically allowed city or taxpayer dollars to use and to pay down the indebtedness of individuals so that they might raise their credit scores to apply for mortgages.
Oh, so it's like a local Freddie and Fannie. It's perfect. When are we ever going to learn our lesson? How many times do we have to be kicked in the head before we learn our lesson here?
I think that's what is so critical for us to get the word out to everybody, because at this day and age, our tax dollars have got to be spent appropriately. And in the city of Houston and nowhere, and I brought with me, these are the emails I received from citizens who found out about this, many of them just from the Houston Chronicle. That's how little notice and discussion there was.
You know, Pam,
this program was brought down. It was pulled. Yes, sir.
Let me just ask you this. You just said, in this day and age, our tax dollars have to be spent wisely. Is there any talk about anybody taking the tax dollars that were just laying around there and giving them to the taxpayers? I don't mean the ones who don't pay taxes. I mean the people who actually paid the taxes and given some of that money back.
Well, you know, to me, that's exactly, if we have too much money, it is never appropriate to use public dollars, our taxpayers' dollars, to subsidize or to help individuals with their personal credit problems in any form or fashion for any reason.
No.
But if we have this surplus money, then yes, let's give it back to the taxpayers. Let's put it in those core services of infrastructure that we need, or let's roll back the tax rate.
Yeah, let's give it back. Thank you very much, Pam. I appreciate it. You know, it just kills me, America. We are taking money from responsible people
and giving those dollars to irresponsible people. Oh, that's going to work out nicely. Washington, D.C. now has something else. Blood shooting out of your eyes. They have non-voting representatives in Congress, but that's going to change. Sounds like a good idea. I mean, if you're going to have somebody that votes, let the vote count, right? Unfortunately, it needs to change the Constitution. But those in Congress have decided, that pesky Constitution, just leave it as it is and do this anyway. Wait, next. Today on radio, I compared what's going on in Washington to that old Johnny Cash song, One Piece at a Time. They're taking it one piece at a time. Here's the latest. District of Columbia House Voting Rights Act would give D.C. a full vote in the House of Representatives. Opponents argue that the bill violates the Constitution because D.C. isn't a state. According to the Constitution, House of Representatives is chosen by, quote, the people of the United States. Supporters say, well, Congress has the power to grant D.C. full voting rights if they want to, but I don't think this is really about, taxation and no representation. We have Hans van Spakovsky, he is the former commissioner for the Federal Elections Commission, and Alir Zirka, he is executive director of D.C. Vote, advocacy group that supports the bill. Okay, Alon, let me just start with you, sir. You say no taxation without representation, right, which I agree with.
That's right.
Okay.
Washingtonians, go ahead. I'm sorry, Glenn.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's why we were founded. We want representation. How could you possibly take my money if you're not going to let me choose how it is spent? However, the way this is being pushed through Congress right now is under the radar and absolutely not constitutional. They changed the Constitution. Have the real discussion.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The constitutional argument, I think, is a smokescreen for people who are opposed to voting representation for Washingtonians. Someone like Judge Ken Starr has argued very forcefully, and I think convincingly, that Congress does have the power under something called the District Clause to treat the city as if it's a state. And it already does that for purposes of the Commerce Clause and the Diversity Jurisdiction Clause of the Constitution.
Look.
So Judge Ken Starr and Viet Dinh and other conservatives say that we can do it this way, and I agree with them, and so does the majority of the Congress.
Hans, let's give America a little perspective on what this means when he says they just don't want to give them representation because they don't want the vote. They're going for the congressional vote now, or for the House vote now, but the real, Hans, correct me if I'm wrong, yes or no, the real goal is to also get the Senate as well.
Oh, I think that's for sure going to be the next step. But I mean, this is blatantly unconstitutional, and Mr. Zirka mentions the District Clause, which gives Congress exclusive jurisdiction over the district. Well, that's because the founders saw Washington as a federal city, and of course they're going to have authority over running the city. That same paragraph gives Congress the same authority over forts, armories, Navy bases, and other federal buildings. But if we were to propose that they give Andrews Air Force Base, for example, a voting member of Congress, everybody would say, well, that's an absurd proposal.
Yeah, response.
Michael Steele, Michael Steele, who's head of the Republican National Committee, thinks that this is a civil rights issue. And Mike Pence, who's part of the Republican leadership in the House, also thinks that this is both constitutional and the right thing to do.
Listen. Then let's have that conversation. I am so sick of people taking this Constitution. It took these guys a long time. They read a lot of books and a lot of history to put the principles together in this thing, and we're running it through the shredder every time somebody wants to do what they want to do. Look, you either change the Constitution, live by the Constitution, and have those conversations, or you know what the hell are we even doing? Why play this game anymore?
Glenn, the reason the proponents are... The reason proponents are doing this through legislation is because 30 years ago they tried to do this through a constitutional amendment, and the states failed to ratify it. The reason they're able in the district today to vote for president is because in 1961 the states ratified the 23rd Amendment. If this could be done without a constitutional amendment, there would have been no need to do it that way, and they could have done it through legislation. They didn't. They passed the 23rd Amendment. They can vote for president.
America.
If they believe that they need representation in Congress, then they need to convince the rest of the country to support this and do it through a constitutional amendment.
Okay, look, here's the deal. America, when we come back, hang on. When we come back, I'm going to tell you what this is really all about. Next.
Yeah, but it's going to cronies.
I tell you, I don't know what that was. I love the word cronies thrown in. There's so much for all of us to worry about every day. I don't honestly know how you do it, because it's hard for me with a great staff of people around me to try to keep up. We want to talk about the D.C. voting rights bill that's going on now. Hans von Spukowski is here. He's a former commissioner for the Federal Elections Commission. And Alir Zirka, he is the executive director of D.C. Vote, an advocacy group that supports the bill. And I guess let me start here. That Americans are fair. We don't have a problem with discussing something that somebody wants to do and having a fair fight about it. But here's what's going on. This is being pushed in through the cover of darkness because it will most likely give the Democrats 2 more votes in the Senate. That's all this is about. They're just pushing it in the cover of... Yes, it is. Look, I lived in the District of Columbia. You shake your head. I lived in the District of Columbia for a while. I think it is wrong to have taxation without representation. But let's do it the right way.
Well, you know, I think the right way to do it is to get the Congress of the United States to pass a bill and to provide voting representation. We can do that. The Congress treats the district as if it's a state already. And it's really a national disgrace that we allow this country to treat Washingtonians this way. You know, if you live in Maryland and you move to France, you could have voting representation in Maryland for the next 30 years. But if you move 2 blocks down into the district, then you lose it. It doesn't make sense.
You're right. You are right. You have a supporter in me. Now do it the constitutional way. Hans, tell me that this is not just yet another, because Utah and Orrin Hatch is cutting a deal because he gets an extra House member if he goes along with this. So he's getting an extra House member. But then here's the catch. Utah, that you may lose that House member depending on what the next census says.
No, I think that's absolutely guaranteed. The census in 2010, Utah might have this seat for a year or two, but it's highly probable that that seat is going to get switched to a large Democratic state like California.
Who's in control of the Senate? Oh, I remember they just moved it to the White House. Stop playing the games. All right, guys, thank you very much. Now, listen, I just wanted to spend a second, and I told you this, I think, a couple of days ago. Sometimes I look at my life and I go, I can't believe this is my life. We've just had such great success here at Fox, and today we just found out here on WOR, which is the radio station I'm on in New York City. I do a nationally syndicated show. We just started here in New York about a month ago. We didn't expect, I mean, I'm a rodeo clown, what do I know? We just found out today that we are beating WABC, legendary station, beating WABC by 77% in the demo in our first month. It's amazing. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Good night, America.